everyone, and thanks for joining us for the first Topical Tuesday of 2022. We are so happy to welcome Pete Stewart today. He's going to be talking to us all about how we can support our LGBTQ students in the Media Center. Before we get there, just a couple of housekeeping things. If your microphone isn't muted, please mute it when you aren't speaking. Use the Q&A feature. That really helps us keep track of the questions. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Pete.
All right. So let's see if I can click the right button. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I was asked to speak for a few minutes on your Tropical Tuesday, so I guess I should say aloha. But we're going to talk about the importance of media centers and the role they play for our LGBTQ plus students as well as staff. So my name's Pete Stewart. I use he and him pronouns, which is one important piece that we can do with students in both our media centers and our classrooms, is by making it comfortable to use pronouns by introducing ourselves using our pronouns. So this is kind of an abbreviated presentation. I'll do my best not to be an auctioneer, but as we go along, please ask questions, and hopefully we'll share some great information today. So usually, of course, we start with a welcoming ritual, and so one that we use, but you certainly could use others. But this was, which is your favorite LGBTQ plus characters? And it might be characters that are not even up here. But we'll kind of fast forward through this, but you're welcome to put it into the chat box or even just think about it. But obviously, we see a lot more LGBTQ characters now on TV and in movies, but even in books, and particularly in YA books, right? So now we're seeing a lot of characters in YA books, for example, Lily and Duncan and others. But we're also seeing a lot more LGBTQ plus authors. So that's great for that representation piece, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. And of course, we want to acknowledge the land that we're on and the previous indigenous communities that occupied this land, including the Yega. And there's more information on this slide if you'd like to click on it and find more information about those folks who previously inhabited our land. I do get a CDC Dash grant, so this is standard in all of our presentations. And so our objectives today will be to identify 3 ways to help make your media center a more safe and supportive, inclusive space for LGBTQ youth. To detail how books can serve as as mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, and discuss 3 activities that you could utilize in your media center or school to empower LGBTQ and gender expansive youth. So we'll revisit those at the end and see if we've done that. Again, this is me. It's one great thing that you can do in your media center in your classrooms is to introduce yourself, including your pronouns. That makes it safe and comfortable for students using the media center to do the same. Pronouns are important because they go to the core of our identity. I'll give you a quick example. My daughter's name is Hunter, but a lot of people assume because her name is Hunter that she's a boy. So oftentimes when they call for her or send mail, they will misgender her. And you know, that kind of goes to our core identity, right? Our name and our pronouns. So it's hard to be misgendered. But we oftentimes do it. So pronouns, of course, you'll see a lot are he, him, and his, and she, her, and hers. But also many folks, particularly transgender folks, non-binary, gender non-conforming, may use they, them, and their in a singular usage. That can take a little bit of practice to get used to for some folks, not for all folks. And those are probably the three most common you'll hear. And then there's some other neo-pronouns that you probably won't hear as much. You see some of them here as easier and zers, they, here and heres. Those can get harder to get used to, but they're used exactly the same way as the other pronouns. That Pete, Z is a great guy. I'd love to hang out with Zier at the beach one day. So, but again, it's important to acknowledge a person's pronouns and the gender and affirm name that they're using. Will they have, can we share this with everybody through Google Docs?
We can absolutely share it with people through Google Docs. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so then I do want to show this little vignette. It's just a little over 2 minutes. Hopefully I click the right one so that we have sound. And then the other ones, depending on time, we may have to skip and you can watch on your own. But this one kind of gives a basic overview of sexual orientation and gender identity and kind of where they intersect and how they're different.
All right, folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese. Sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow! In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients. A rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on a robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog? Or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay. I remember. A very nice young... Come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait, aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a hee?
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way. But the sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not always the case, because gender exists on a spectrum. Like transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex. Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female. And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people you may or may not be attracted to.
You know, I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you. But I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them. To start, try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender, and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to. Above all, be a friend or ally for people of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from Italy, you know.
So that is just a very brief introduction, and there's actually a lot of concepts just in that little vignette. But we want you to be aware. Uh-oh, what did I hit? Go away. We just want you to be aware, and I'm sure many of you know, but you know, we deal with a multitude of students that have many intersectional identities, and sexual orientation and gender identity happen to be 2 of many of their identities. And so we want you to be aware, of course, of the students that you'll be working with, but also to have your media center be that safe and inclusive place that includes books about them, that look like them, that show their lived experience, but also show experiences of others to those students that don't identify that way. I'm not going to read these. We're just going to go over these briefly, but I just want to make sure that, we're all on the same level playing field. So when we talk about LGBTQ plus, there obviously can be a lot more letters than that in the definition. But in brief, what you see here, a lesbian would be someone, may be someone who identifies as female, who is primarily attracted to others who identify as female. Gay usually refers to someone who identifies as male, attracted to other males, but can be used in general to anyone who is attracted to anyone else of the same gender. Bisexual is a person who's attracted to both people of their own gender and another gender. It says here may also be called pansexual. Pansexual is a distinct identity, but it's someone who is attracted to folks regardless of gender. Transgender is actually an umbrella term, which oftentimes when we talk about transgender, we're talking about someone whose gender identity does not align with their sex assigned at birth or their, quote, biological sex. And the transgender umbrella could include transgender as well as gender nonconforming, non-binary, which, as you saw in the little vignette, are students who may not identify as male or female. It may be something in between the two of those, or something completely outside of those, or not even identifying by a gender, which is also called agender. And then we want to talk as well about the difference between gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation. So sexual orientation is to whom one is attracted, and that can change over time. Gender identity is how someone identifies themselves. And so if you're all familiar with Jazz Jennings, and hopefully you've got her book in your library. She one time around the age of 7 said that she has a girl brain but a boy body. So she identifies as female, and that does not align with her sex assigned at birth. And then gender expression is how you choose to express your gender. And that could be clothing, could be makeup, could be fingernail polish, could be hair, voice. There's a number of ways that we express ourselves to others and how we want to appear. And again, that can change over time. Certainly, more formal attire, more athletic attire, and those things can change over time. And if there's any questions, hopefully, Lisa, you're helping me monitor the chat box. But I think a lot of this is somewhat, we somewhat all have this knowledge. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. The genderbread person breaks this down really well.
We did have one quick question.
Yes.
We did have one quick question, which with the pronouns, why the Z?
Why the Z? So neopronouns are kind of a way that folks are identify themselves using these pronouns. There's really, well, there's kind of endless pronouns, but there's really 10 that are most common. So he, him, and his, she, her, and hers, they, them, and theirs. And then we've got Z, Zir, here, C, S-E, Z, X, E, and one or two others that are escaping the top of my head right now. And it's just how people identify their pronouns. Those that are non-binary don't identify as he, him. They don't identify as she, her, but they, them may not fit for them either. And so it's just a different set of pronouns that they use to identify themselves. So this does a great job here of kind of identifying the 4 pieces that we put together when we talk about these issues. So our gender identity, that's the brain. That's how we identify. It's how we think about ourselves in terms of womanness or manness or other. For explanation purposes, this kind of uses the binary, but we're trying to get away from the binary at the same time, so makes it a little bit difficult. But attraction, that's who we're attracted to. So that can be sexual attractiveness, that can be romantic attractiveness. Some folks are even aromantic, so they're not attracted to anyone. Then expression is the outward appearance. That's how we express ourselves. And biological sex or sex assigned at birth is usually identified at birth, possibly even before birth. How do we usually reveal what a baby's gender is? Anyone, throw it out there.
Through colors.
Yeah, sometimes we do it through colors, right? We paint the baby's bedroom, or we have some kind of a gender reveal party, right? But how does a baby? How does a doctor, a medical professional, let the parent or caregiver know what the sex of the child is? So it's usually through observation, right? So the medical professional delivers the child and looks at it and goes, "It's a boy," or "It's a girl," and so that's why it's called. Why we refer to it as sex assigned at birth is because it's based basically on primary sex characteristics observed by the medical professional. Could also be based on secondary sex characteristics, but oftentimes we even gender babies before they're born with those gender reveal parties and painting the bedroom and things, right? So we do that very early in the child's life, and so they may identify later as a different gender. We'll kind of breeze over this data so that we can get to our information. I know we have limited time today, but I wanted to give you an idea of students in our district. So these are students in Palm Beach County. This is done on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which we do every 2 years in Palm Beach. We just completed it in fall of 2021, so we will have new data in the spring. But this is the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. The other great thing is the 2021 survey that we just completed. We will have transgender data for Palm Beach County. I only have it right now for the state because we've never asked those questions before. But right now, we have 17.1% of our students who self-identified, who answered these questions and said that they identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or questioning their sexual orientation. So 17.1%, that's a little more than 1 in 6 students. So we're talking 5 in a class of 30. We're talking 500 in a school of 3,000. That's a lot. So this affects a lot of our kids. Many of them don't feel safe at school or on their way to or from school. Many of them are bullied on school property. A disproportionate number compared to their heterosexual peers are bullied on school property. They're also cyberbullied. They also may participate at a disproportionate rate in self-harm, such as cutting or burning or pulling of hair. A disproportionate number of them compared to their peers considered suicide. Many of them were teased because somebody thought that they were LGBTQ. But if you look here at the heterosexual peers, make the arrow, I don't know if you can see my arrow. Anyway, the one right next to it, you can see that almost 8% of straight students were also teased for being LGBTQ. So this is a way to bully others, is to say that you're so gay or that's so queer or whatever it might be. It's a way that students bully each other. So we know that there's a lot of issues for our LGBTQ plus students. Obviously, bathroom use and PE and locker room and changing issues are a big one. Athletics, as we just saw in the last legislative session, dress codes in schools, use of names and pronouns by school staff, harassment, which we just saw in some of the questions there as well. So a lot of issues facing our LGBT youth, but we also know things that we can do to improve their experience at school. And that includes inclusive curriculum and resources, as well as instructional material, as well as books in our media center, other media in our media center. So, you know, magazines, periodicals, ebooks. as well as having diversity clubs like GSA clubs, as well as having supportive staff. And so hopefully you have seen our We're All In badges. If you have not, you're welcome to have one after this training, and we'd love to get you one. And we know that by doing these things, as well as inclusive policies, that it shows outcomes in 3 areas: less absenteeism, they feel like they belong at school, and we see an increase in academic performance by half a letter grade. But not just for LGBT kids, for all kids, you know, so this makes the entire campus a safer and more inclusive place. So I don't know why only part of this is showing up. There we go. So in 2019, many of these books appeared on the top 10 list. In 2020, a lot of the books that were requested to be banned shifted to CRT type books like Stamped. But I wanted to show you this, that these are a lot of the last decade's most requested banned books that had LGBTQ content. So George is on there. George has actually been re-released by Alex Gino as Melissa, because that's the character's name, the transgender lead character's name. So the name of the book has actually been changed and will be re-released going forward as Melissa. But George is one of them, and Tango Makes Three. We've got The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Drama, which is a graphic novel. I Am Jazz, of course, has been on the list for a number of years since it came out in 2012, I believe. Two Boys Kissing, Marlon Bundo, and there's actually a couple of other books on the list going down to the top 100 for that decade. But a lot of those books have been banned just because they have LGBT content. So not because they're graphic, not because of any, you know, sexual content, just because they have LGBTQ characters. Since we are running short on time, this is a great little video. It was actually for the 2017 year, but I'll let you watch that on your own. But it just talks about the importance of being able to see these books in the library and being able to have them for free checkout. So a safe space is a safe zone where all people can feel safe, welcome, and included. We've actually started calling them brave spaces, because everywhere on a campus should be a safe space. But a brave space is where folks can come and live their true identity, be their authentic selves, and not worry about harassment. So why media centers? Because we provide a lot of access for our students to be able to see themselves in the books that they're reading, the books and other media. Media centers are also havens for those that may not have any other place to turn. It's a place to hang out with friends and network, and but not talk, right? Just kidding. So I mentioned before that books, as well as curriculum, should serve as mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So how do you think of a book as a mirror? If anybody wants to just throw that out real quickly.
Self-to-text connections.
Great, great. And how about books serving as windows? How do they do that?
Introduce you to a new scene.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want all of our curriculum, and this isn't just for LGBTQ content. This can be race, ethnicity, religion, you know, a whole host of intersectional identities that students live with. We want them to be able to see themselves in the curriculum. So they serve as mirrors for that. We want them to serve as windows for students who may not be introduced to other cultures, who may not have experienced that in their experience in the world. And then even as sliding glass doors to be able to actually enter those other worlds and live that experience, or at least read about it in a way that allows them to bring it into their worldview. So, and we want that for all of our students. For many reasons. One, here by Adrian Rich, when someone with the authority of a teacher or a media specialist or administrator, school board member, superintendent, but they describe the world and you're not in it. There's a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked into a mirror and saw nothing. You're not there. You're not important in history. You know, why am I not in my history class? Why am I not in my ELA class? Why am I not in the media center? ALA has done a number of things to promote this, including the Library Bill of Rights, which says, among other things, that access to library resources and services, regardless of sex, gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation, should be available to all students. We also want the staff members to not only be supportive, but hopefully to be an ally for students that come into their library, to be an ally to fight for those books that students may want to see in the library. And as usual, I'm running short on time. So, but things that you can do to be proactive. Policies, check our district policies. We have policies against discrimination that are enumerated to include gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation. Put a rainbow flag or a We're All In badge or poster or sticker in your office. I've got my flag behind me. I don't know if you can see my window while I'm presenting, but I do have a Progressive Pride flag up behind me. We actually had the opportunity to send those out to all of our middle and high schools last year because the school year extended into June, which is Pride Month. The power of presence. Visit your GSA club at your school. Almost all of our high schools have a GSA club. We've got GSA clubs in about a third of our middle schools, and we'd love to have more. And we've actually even had some interest from our elementary schools, and we would love to see them there as well. Sometimes they even start as a book club by reading a book and discussing it, whichever book that might be. Could be The Misfits, which is actually the basis for next week's No Name Calling Week. By James Howe, came out in 2001. It's a little bit of an older book, but about a school election, to a great one. Participate in LGBTQ History Month, which was back in October. No Name Calling Week, which is next week, the 17th through the 21st. Reading I Am Jazz or Jazz and Friends Day, which comes up on February 24th this year. And we can do a virtual or an in-person reading with some of your students if you'd like. The Day of Silence in April. Pride Month is in June, but we actually hold our Pride Parade February 26th and 27th, I believe, this year. It's the last weekend of March down in Lake Worth Beach. And promote safe and inclusive schools every day in your words and actions. So our collections can include materials that reflect positive LGBTQ themes, authors, very important, and characters. We can display books during certain months, whether that's LGBTQ History Month, but could also be No Name Calling Week, could be Bullying Month, which happens to also be October, so you could be doing double duty during October, but Pride Month and other times throughout the year. Ensure online access to LGBTQ related content and celebrate those holidays that we've already spoken a little bit about. So these are some of the books in our middle and high school collection, just a very few of them. I will send that list to Lisa so you can see all of the books that we've been able to purchase through our grant. And I know many of you forward-thinking media center specialists have had some of these books in your collection already, as well as others that we have not even been able to purchase. And we've taken some of those ideas from you. So thank you for having those books in your collection. And these are some of our elementary school collection. So My Princess Boy and Stick and Stone and Tango Makes Three. Red is one of my favorites, about a blue crayon that's wrapped in a red wrapper and doesn't feel like himself when or themselves when they're coloring strawberries or apples, but when their friends tell them to color the sky and the ocean, they feel like their true authentic self. So lots of great books here in our elementary and media collections. We also have lessons that go along with many of our books. Some of them are from the publisher. Some of them were created by our elementary and secondary ELA departments, so they can be used with those books. This is Jazz and Friends Day. It's coming up on February 24th. So if you'd like to have a reading either virtually or in person through your media center, reach out to us and let us know. I can't really use my arrow, but in the upper left, that's Chad Phillips, the assistant principal over at Elbridge Gale Elementary School. We did a reading over there. We've done readings with school police, with Compass's youth group, with some of our GSA clubs. So please consider participating in that. There's actually a couple of books that you can read this year. We also have some things available through our district portal. You'll see our We're All In tile, which has a lot of great information specifically related to LGBTQ students and staff. And right next to that, you'll see the Destiny tile, which is our electronic portal for books that can be checked out electronically. We do have a We're All In collection from Gale that's available. Is that through Destiny, Lisa, or is that through another portal?
That's through the Gale tile.
Okay, so through the Gale tile, we have a number of ebooks that can be checked out that are nonfiction titles at all levels. And then we also have many of the books that I showed you in our physical collection are also available as ebooks, and that's through Mackin. So that's through Destiny, correct?
No, that will be through Destiny as well as their Mac and Via tile.
Okay. See, that's why I have Lisa here to help me. We also have our posters and badges, again, that hopefully you're familiar with, and if you don't have one, you're welcome to one. This is our district's LGBTQ critical support guide, which talks about a number of issues. It is available through the We're All In tile, so it's available electronically, and we try and keep that updated with any new policy type changes that have occurred. There's many national resolutions for teachers, for media specialists, for PTAs that talk about the importance of supporting LGBTQ youth on campus. And I know we're 3 minutes over, but if I could conclude with this, if you've seen it, you can watch it again.
Mount Horeb is the troll capital of the world. About 10,000 people live in Mount Horeb. It is a one stoplight town. None of us could have imagined what happened in our community.
My daughter was going to transition from being a boy to a girl in first grade. And one of the plans that we had set up with the school psychologist at the time was to read the book I Am Jazz to her class and to the other kids on the same floor as her in school. It's written from the perspective of a child just like our daughter, and in very simple terms explains what exactly is going on.
I first heard about the reading from our neighbors across the street. My friend Erin said, hey, look at this letter that we received from our kids' class. It's that this book called I Am Jazz is going to be read.
In the letter, they said, if you would like your child to opt out of this lesson, please just let us know. Obviously, it backfired. A parent in the Mount Horeb School District that received that letter had contacted this group.
The Liberty Council sent this letter threatening to sue teachers in the school district, and the school district ended up canceling the reading. I didn't know the family, I didn't know this kiddo, but that didn't matter. We had to do something. I mean, there just wasn't a question. The only idea that really came to me was that we just needed to read the book anyway. So I went to the Mount Horeb Public Library and I reserved a small conference room. I did expect probably 20, 25 people at the very most to show up. They had 80 chairs, I think, initially set up for people, and I thought, oh, this will be too many.
When I started getting close to the library, I started noticing the streets were full of cars. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how many people are really here?
People just kept streaming in and finding spots on the ground in between stacks of books, packed 10 deep.
And I walked in the door and I was dumbfounded because the whole library was packed. I couldn't even believe how many people were there.
Nearly 600 people showed up at the library that night.
I had never seen close to that many people in the library before. It was just amazing.
And I never imagined that was what was going to happen.
I just remember feeling very overwhelmed that Mount Horeb was coming together in this way to support our family, especially when they didn't even know who we were. Nobody knew who this family was.
There were no protesters. There was not a single person there speaking out in a negative way.
No trolls?
No trolls.
Their attempt to stop this discussion about transgender children and transgender youth really backfired on them because it spearheaded a campaign for inclusivity on kids like this.
Any of us can take action. You really can just reserve a room at a library. Mount Horeb is.
So, you know, and so of course we are seeing some of this now. There are books that are being requested to be pulled. And so that's why not only do you have support to have these books on your shelf from Diana Fetterman, our assistant superintendent, from Lisa Seymour and her staff, but, you know, we want these books on the shelf. And in order to ensure that when we select these books, we look for 2 or 3 reviews from ALA type journals. We obviously look for award winners, whether it's Endicott, Newbery, Stonewall, Lambda Book Award, so that if there is a challenge, we've got ironclad backup for why we chose that book for our shelves. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm sorry we went 7 minutes over, but if you have any questions, I'll stick around. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. If not, thank you for being here. We can certainly do a more in-depth presentation if you'd like. This is kind of the Cliff's Notes, to use a book metaphor. But if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll be happy to stick around.
Thanks so much, Pete. I appreciate you guys all coming. Thank you, Pete, for presenting and sharing your knowledge with us. We are so grateful. Libraries should always be a safe haven, and we love partnering with you to make our libraries that safe haven. Suhail, we are going to get you a list of the books that are inclusive by grades that have been put into the Media Center already. There will be more coming. We had tried to do that last year, but supply line issues. It is what it is. So we will begin trying to do that. We will add those titles and then some. Those titles are in your Mac and Via. The ones we could purchase digitally are in your Mac and Via collections. Please, 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 when you're doing anything positive in your library, tag us, use our hashtag #LoveMyLibraryPBCSD. If you want points, make sure that you've registered in e-learning. There's just one follow-up activity, and our next session will be January 25th. We are going to be inviting Kim Davik from Teaching Books to share with us the latest in teaching books. With that, I'm going to stop recording. If you have questions, feel free to unmute and go ahead and ask your questions.